Hello everyone! Today I want to go over the types of containers I use the most often in my garden, the pros and cons that I've noticed with each over the years, and hopefully help you determine which types of containers might work best for your environment, because there really will be differences in how you use these depending upon your climate, but also I use different ones for different plants also depending on their needs. But before I jump into that, I just want to make sure everyone knows that basically, you can use anything as a container in your garden as long as you have some sort of drainage, whether you're drilling a hole or it comes with some sort of drainage in it. Don't think you're limited to just what's considered traditional containers. I've seen people use bathtubs in their parkway and fill those with plants, so just keep that in mind. Anything that you might have around the house, that might be able to be used for a container. Now, the types I'm going to go over, which again are the ones I'm using most often in my garden. First are grow bags, and I will go more into detail on each of these in just a second. Then I have unglazed terracotta pots. I have wooden raised beds, but those are too heavy to move inside for this video. So this basket, which I guess technically I could use as a planter, I don't know if it would last very long, but this wooden basket is going to represent my wooden raised beds. I have a glazed ceramic pot, and then I have either like plastic or resin pots. And these are the container types you will find most often in my garden. Now, I'm going to start off with what is now the most important quality for me when determining a container type. So when I first started gardening, I cared about looks. And then pretty quickly, I learned that just because a pot looks really pretty doesn't mean it's very functional. So now I definitely go for function over form. And for me, the number one priority is the weight of the container. And this might be different for you if you're not gardening on a rooftop deck, where you have to be able to carry the containers up, if you want to carry them around the deck as well. So I first started off by mostly having really pretty ceramic containers that I also couldn't leave outside, so I had to bring them inside over the winter. These are so heavy compared to the other container types that I have. So I have fewer, and I'm even wondering if I had any just regular glazed ceramic in my garden. This pot goes on the front stoop, which I don't move those at all during the season. And because it's relatively small, this one is easy to carry. But when you're already using containers that are heavy and then you add soil to them and then you wet that soil, that's gonna add even more weight. So I now lean towards lighter weight containers that I can easily move around. So if I was looking at the different types that I have and I was going to order them in terms of least weight to most weight, grow bags are definitely the least because, well, they are made of fabric. So even if I had a 30-gallon grow bag, which I do, it weighs about the same as a 7-gallon grow bag. All of them are, I don't even know if this is a pound. I don't think so. That way, when I do fill it with soil, yes, it does get a little bit heavier, but the container itself is not adding to the weight. I can very easily carry these up the stairs. I can carry them down the stairs. I can move these around wherever I want. So these are definitely the lightest weight, which is why I use so many grow bags in my garden. Next would be a plastic or resin container. Again, super lightweight. This is maybe like a 1 to 2 gallon pot, but I have some that are 20-inch diameter pots. And again, if they're empty, I can toss them up in the air and catch them just fine. So plastic is what I go to next, I would say, after the grow bag. Then we have wood. Again, larger wood beds, like my raised beds, they're going to be heavier than this basket, but I can, for the most part, still move an empty wooden raised bed around by myself. And those can be like 2 feet wide or 3 feet wide, 2 feet long, and I can still carry those on my own. With dirt and plants, they are now in their permanent places, but this I would say would be the next heaviest. Then we have unglazed terracotta and then ceramic pots. So if weight is an issue and you do have to carry these around, whether it's around your garden, if it's in your yard, or up and down stairs, weight is my number one issue, especially because with rooftop decks, you want to make sure you're not overloading your deck. I have a whole video going over deck capacity so that you don't damage the structure of your house. I will link that down below. But for me, lighter weight just makes more sense in my garden. After weight, then I do start looking at the different prices of container types. And I would say pricing might be in a similar order to this. I find less of a price difference looking at like plastic or resin pots and terracotta pots, wooden flower boxes, but pretty ceramic pots are definitely more expensive. And that was another big thing that changed for me. I want to spend my money on the potting soil that I need and on the plants. I don't want to have a bunch of expensive pots in my garden, even if they are really beautiful, that are going to take budget away from me being able to fill my garden with plants. So that's another reason I've moved away from ceramic pots. Grow bags are by far the cheapest. I have 30-gallon grow bags. This is a 7-gallon right here. My 30-gallon grow bags are out on the front deck because, again, now that they're filled with soil, I can't really move them in and out, nor would I want to. But I got a 5-pack of 30-gallon grow bags back in 2019 for $30. So each of the bags came out to about $6, and I'm still using the same grow bags from 2019. So now that cost has been divided out over the last 6 years. So those are so cheap. You are not going to find a 30-gallon ceramic, terracotta, wooden, plastic container for $6. So if you're looking for size and affordability, I would say that grow bags are the way to go. And then, like I said, wooden, plastic, terracotta, I find that they're all pretty even, but I would recommend trying to find free containers, because free containers are always the best. I have a good amount of containers in my garden that were free. Some of the places I found them, well, just gardening friends giving them away, but also no-buy groups on Facebook. See if there's a no-buy group on Facebook for your city, your town, or your neighborhood. I found some really great things on there. Also, any Facebook groups in general, some people might be selling something that used to be $200 for like $50. Estate sales are another great place to find cheaper containers than just going to a garden center and buying something new. Plus, then you get to reuse something. So I would say try to get free containers if possible. But again, this is how I would kind of order them from least expensive going up to the most expensive. And obviously size is going to have an impact. This basket costs a lot less than my wooden raised bed does. But in general, this is what I find as far as type of container and the cost associated with it. Now on that, let's talk a little bit about size and my recommendations, which again have also changed from the first year that I was gardening. The first year I had so many small pots and I was a 1 plant per pot person. That requires a lot more maintenance than if you have larger containers. So my recommendation would be larger containers. You're going to have to water them a lot less often. It's going to lower maintenance for you. The only thing that you want to be careful of is don't plant anything that's going to spread like mint and take over the whole bed. So always check to make sure if your plants are aggressive and put those in separate containers. But for the most part, I am now shifting towards larger containers, fewer larger containers instead of more tinier containers. And again, it drastically cuts down on my maintenance. I have most of my herbs in these 8-inch terracotta pots. I'm actually going to upsize because even though these are set up on my irrigation, which covers almost all the container types that I have, I still have to water these more often in between because they are terracotta and they do dry out a lot faster. So if I had larger containers or potentially a different material, that would cut down on me having to do that. So keep that in mind. Again, that is my recommendation. If you want your garden a little lower maintenance, go for fewer larger containers. And if you want some on the cheaper end versus a lot of tiny containers. You might hear a cat about to come in and yell. That's Penelope. Come on over here. I can teach you about some container types. Hang on, let me pet her. Oh, you can't run away, and I can't pet you if you run away, Movie. So now that I mentioned about containers drying out, let's talk about how porous each of these materials are. And that basically just means how many small openings there might be in the material for water and air to get through. Now, the more porous a material is, the faster it's going to dry out. So let me reorder these from most porous to least porous. Grow bags are definitely the most porous. There's not even a drainage hole because the water can escape through all of the material. So this is going to be the most porous, meaning that this would dry out faster than the rest of these containers. Next, we have wood. Let's pretend that this is a solid wood basket that doesn't have a bunch of holes in it. Wood would be next, and of course, if you're sealing it, that'll make a difference. Then we have unglazed terracotta, which I love terracotta pots inside as well, and I also love terracotta saucers. Make sure they're either using glazed terracotta, or I will put these on plastic or glass saucers in my house so that I don't damage the wood, which I found out terracotta was porous after damaging some wood at our last place. Now, even though this does look pretty solid, water can seep out from all sides of this material, not as quickly as a grow bag. You still want to have drainage holes, but just know that this one does dry out a little bit faster. However, if it's sealed, it'll dry out a little bit slower. Then we have the glazed ceramic. The glaze on these makes it less porous than the unglazed terracotta. So this one's going to dry out a lot more slowly than the unglazed terracotta, which I like in some instances. I actually use these a lot for my houseplants so that when I ignore my houseplants during the garden season, they don't dry out as quickly. So this tends to work really well for the plants that I have inside. And then what I would say is the least porous material is going to be, again, resin, plastic, metal, if you have any metal containers in your garden. So these are going to retain moisture the longest. Now you might think, well, shouldn't all my plants be in something that's going to hold on to the water longer? No, because I have killed more plants from root rot, which occurs when the soil stays too moist and there's not enough oxygen for the roots, than I have from plants drying out. So I do have specific plants that I find work better or not as well in some of these containers. Dahlia tubers are in here. I have caused so many dahlia tubers to rot in other types of containers. That is why I put them in grow bags. The other reason is that I carry them down to the garage, so this is a lot easier to carry than any of the other container types. Any plants that are a bit more thirsty, then those I will go for a resin or plastic container. And then kind of in the middle for the rest of my plants in the middle. Honestly, I could probably switch my herbs to a less porous material than the unglazed terracotta, but I just think it looks really pretty. So this is the one area in my garden where I am leaning more towards aesthetics than actual functionality, but that's why I'm increasing in size, because the larger the container, again, the slower the water is going to dry out of the soil. Your own gardening environment can also determine which container types you want to use. If you live in a very dry, low humidity environment, you might want to go for something that is less porous. If you live in a very wet, very humid environment, you might want to go towards something that is more porous. So again, it's going to be very different for everyone's gardening situation. I also have plants up here on the rooftop that dry out faster than the front pots at ground level because they are getting a lot more direct sun. So again, even different locations of your garden, different containers might work better. Another thing I have to think about here in Chicago, which you might not have to think about, is overwintering your containers. So like I mentioned, terracotta and ceramic pots are prone to cracking in the winter as the soil's in them and it gets wet and dries and wet and dries and freezes, and all of that causes these pots to crack. So anything that is ceramic, anything that is terracotta, I do bring inside. I should have washed them right when I did that, but I will do that early spring. At least that's what I tell myself. So that was one of the issues I had with the larger, prettier ceramic pots, is that I had to bring them inside, and the heavier they are, the more a pain in the butt that is. So now all of my pretty ceramic pots, like I said, are on my houseplants, and I don't have to bring the pots inside for the winter because they are already inside. I will talk a little bit about some things I do put under these containers though to make them a little bit more mobile in just a second. So for these containers, ceramic and terracotta, you probably are not going to want to leave outside in the winter. I do leave out my grow bags. In general, anything that you move inside or cover for the winter will last you a bit longer, but I don't do that. So, but my grow bags, like I said, the 30-gallon ones have been outside since 2019 every winter. Is there a bit wear and tear? Yes, but they still work, and that's all that matters to me. I do notice that my raised beds do have some wear and tear on them. Plastic doesn't really do anything. It's fine outside. These are the types of containers that I need to bring indoors every winter. So think about that. Things you can store outside versus things you can store inside. And if you have room to store all your containers inside if necessary. And then my last qualifier that I'm going to go over is how likely are they to cause damage to a wooden deck? And that might not be something you need to be concerned with, but it is something I need to be concerned with. So in that case, let me just shift these over. Essentially, the more porous a container, the worse it is to be sitting directly on your wooden deck. Because for example, this, which basically kind of stays like a sponge, you know you're not supposed to leave sponge on wooden surfaces. So I have now changed up a few things just to protect my deck. I still use all of these containers in the same ways, but I've just kind of figured out how I can use them and also not destroy my deck. So I would always, always, always put something underneath grow bags if they are on a wooden deck. I would always put something underneath wood because this is also porous. I'm basically a person that's putting their entire garden on wheels or lifts. That's just personal preference. These, I would still say it's better to have them lifted off the deck than sitting directly on. You'd probably be okay, but I still like to just give everything a little bit of space. So here are some of the things that I use. I call these plant lifts. I just get them off of Amazon. And basically, so there's holes in them so the water can drain. I put them on the deck and I set my container on top. That way it can still drain if the drainage hole is only at the bottom. There's about 1 inch now where it can drain out without directly hitting the deck. So that just helps with airflow in general all the way around a container. These are made of plastic, which again is the least porous material, so will be the best option for protecting your deck. I use these for lighter weight containers. For anything that's a little bit heavier that I might want to move around the deck, I use plant caddies with wheels. These I really like because they have locks, so I can lock it into place once I set it down in its proper place. I don't have to worry about it rolling around. And then I just unlock it and the wheels roll. I have this under, well, not this size. Let me show you how it works. Basically, I can put this on this and then wheel it around, which is very nice. So what I have on wheels, some are on these exact caddies. This is the most popular one I have. They have to be smaller containers. I also have some very large wheels that I'll link down below that I have underneath my 30-gallon grow bag. So even though I can never pick up my 30-gallon grow bag on my own, I can move it anywhere on the deck because now it's on wheels, which is so fantastic. I want to be a girl whose entire garden is on wheels at some point in time. And I'm very, very close, I feel like, to achieving that. When I had my wall of dahlias and zinnias, they were in the 7-gallon grow bag. And I set the grow bag, every grow bag on top of one of these lifts. One thing you just want to make sure of is that the bag isn't larger than the lift because then it can kind of sag over and still touch the deck. But these have worked out really well. So I'm going to link down the specific ones that I use, but check the measurements and the measurements of your containers to make sure that they will fit. Now, one question I have been asked is, what is my favorite type of grow bag? I really like all the grow bags I have, but so far what I've seen is that these from Bootstrap Farmer are the most durable. So I've had some, which is probably the least common issue I have, where I will get a little tear if there's a seam. There really isn't, I mean, I guess there's one seam here, but it just seems very well sewn. The issue I have the most is that handles will rip off from sitting out in the sun and kind of crisping up and just general deterioration. These are also sewn on really well. So I have never had an issue with the handles ripping off, the bags ripping. Now I will say this is gonna be my second year, I think, with these, but I have had issues within the very first year of some of the other grow bags that I've used. Another thing I like about Bootstrap Farmer is that, oh, this is not sponsored by the way, they don't know who I am, but I really wanted darker brown grow bags. I like the black ones, but I don't want to have too much black in my garden to kind of make it look a bit darker. And I did try beige grow bags, which got very dirty very quickly. This has kind of been a happy medium, the dark brown, because you might still see a little bit of the dirt showing through, but it's not nearly as bad as a beige grow bag. And because my deck is brown. The wood's brown, it's the brick around the side. This blends in really well. So overall, this is my favorite grow bag. 7-gallon, which is what this is the size that I do use the most often, but I also have 10-gallon and I think 30-gallon. I don't think I have anything else in between currently. Now there is one other issue I want to talk about, but I'm definitely not an expert in it, and I find the more I research, the more confused I get, and that is how environmentally friendly the different container types are. So I'm going to tell you what I've figured out so far. You tell me any advice that you have on what is more or less environmentally friendly. But things like wood, especially mine are untreated cedar wood, those can be recycled as soon as they kind of start to rot, or maybe they're not working as well for my raised beds. Unglazed terracotta pots. These are probably what I would say are the two most environmentally friendly. I'm not sure about metal. Let me know. I feel like that would be more on the environmentally friendly side. One of the things I'm not sure of is how much a glazed ceramic or terracotta pot makes a difference. So let me know if you know that information. Grow bags is one of those that has been very confusing because some people say they are, some people say they aren't, some people say there is microplastics in them, some say that there aren't. I'm sure it varies by different brand. So if you know of brands that you would consider the most environmentally friendly, also let me know that. And then finally, I am in general trying to use less plastic in my garden. I'm pretty sure this is a plastic pot. I have some that are resin. I don't know if resin is more environmentally friendly than plastic. I think they're similar but different, but again, doing research made me more confused. Also, I do have pots that are made from recycled plastic, but then I was also reading that recycled plastic really isn't any better and we should just not be using plastic at all. So if you are an expert in any of those areas, or if you have any things that I can read or that have been really helpful, let me know. I'm still going to continue using the plastic I have in my garden because it is very durable and lasts a long time, which can be part of the problem with it. I don't want to get rid of the containers I'm currently using because that seems even more wasteful. So that's kind of what I've been trying to figure out in terms of the friendliness of the different container types. So let me know down below in the comments. And I think that's going to be it. So I hope that was helpful. Again, I look at weight, I look at price, I look at how much water they retain or not, and that will vary based on your plant's needs, your environment. So just keep all of that in mind. If you have any questions for me about, like, here's my certain garden type or my certain plant, let me know down below. And on that, let me quickly tell you some of the things I grow. In my grow bags, I have all of my veggies. They just seem to really like it. I have all of my dahlias. Anything that seems more susceptible to root rot, I will put in a grow bag. All of my annual flowers are pretty much everywhere. I say those are in mostly my wooden raised beds. In my pots, again, my herbs are all in terracotta pots, just for looks. I'm trying to think what else. Other than that, I don't think there's anything specific. Oh, I will say, if I leave something out over winter, I do have those, like my raspberry bushes and my evergreens. I do have those in resin pots because that is going to, again, not let as much cold air into the root ball. So that's why I leave those out and they can be left out over winter. But yeah, I think that's everything. Questions and advice, please let me know down below and I will see you in the next video. Bye.